Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad. And we've got another guest today.
We have Mel Davis back with us again. If you remember, we had Mel on the show with us back on April 10th. Mel works with the Rainbow Alliance Advocacy and specializes in interactive diversity, equity, and inclusion training and LGBT plus community empowerment events, doing all kinds of things like DEI training and all kinds of community empowerment events like outdoor programs and game nights and professional development. And we've got Mel back with us again. Thank you so much for joining us, Mel.
Hi, Raya. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
I really appreciate you having me back. I was excited to get the call. So my name is Mel Davis. My pronouns are she, her, hers, or fey, fair, fairs.
We wanted to talk to you about something that I've really wanted to address on the show for a long time, but I don't feel qualified to talk about, and that is pronouns. I work with the Inclusion and Diversity Group at my company, which is one of it's a Fortune 50 company, and I'll do some things, but I don't have my own like professional training. And we've talked about pronouns, and we've got some resources that are already there for us that are pre-made that we kind of walk through. But every time we talk about it, I know it's the biggest topic that has so many questions. Would you tell us a little bit about why pronouns are so important?
So basically, pronouns are really important because they validate someone's existence. When a person is misgendered, for example, misgendering, for those who don't know, is when a person is referred to as the wrong gender. So say someone identifies using he, him pronouns, and then someone else says she, blah, 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 they have been misgendered. Vice versa, if someone uses they, them pronouns and someone says he or she, they again have been misgendered. The biggest problem with those, with being misgendered is something that a lot of trans people are very familiar with. A lot of people who are not trans don't even necessarily know what it means, but maybe they've heard the words. Gender dysphoria, not having any validation for what is important in your identity. Gender dysphoria can create a slew of emotions that are very, very negative. Now, it doesn't just mean, oh, poo, someone called me the wrong thing. It's not like, oh, my name's Dave, they called me Dan. Crap, This is a very, very, very deep feeling that can happen for people. Now, it's going to be different for every person. It's going to be different based on the situation, based on their own confidence in their own identity, and a number of other things. But gender dysphoria can cause some very severely depressive states for some people. So it's really important to be, I'm just rambling.
So you talk about gender dysphoria being such an emotional issue for these people. Is it more traumatic when they first come out, or and does it fade after time? Is it different 10 years later, 20 years later? Is it more severe, less severe, or is there no correlation?
So that's going to be very person-specific and occasion-specific. If someone is purposefully misgendering a person, targeting that person, that can be extremely hurtful. However, sometimes it happens on accident from loved ones. And when that happens, that can also be very traumatic for the person because they feel like this person loves me. They should know me well enough that this is really important. And this other person just totally didn't even care enough to try.
From my perspective, just with Raya, it appeared to me that in the very beginning, it was much more traumatic for her. And now it's just, oh, yeah, that was a mistake. And she doesn't even address it.
Well, only because it doesn't happen much anymore. But I can tell you, if you're cisgender and you're trying to figure out what is this like, I can explain my experience with this. And that is, imagine if you were out and about and somebody, as a cisgendered person, misgendered you. So imagine that, somebody said, for instance, may I have your permission to go ahead and intentionally misgender you, Dad?
Oh, sure.
So if I said, I was talking to my dad and she said, that would just sound strange. It just
Yes, it
sounds
would.
odd. Now,
Exactly.
imagine I've gone through my whole life with gender issues and wrestled with this, and I finally come out and I tell the whole world and I say, this is who I am. Now, not only does that feel jarring to me, just like that would feel jarring to you, it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
But it feels wrong in a way that invalidates all of that stress and all of everything that I went through in order to be who I am. Not
Actually,
only is it wrong, but it's wrong and hurtful.
using me as an example, I can tell you over the years that's happened to me a lot on the phone. A lot of times because my voice sounds a little bit different. Many times people when stranger, telemarketers or whatever, they'll say, "Okay, ma'am," this, and it's not unusual.
Thing is that you also want to take point and note of there is that it's someone he doesn't know or care about. So if it's someone you don't know or care about, that may or may not bother a person as much as someone you really care about, a loved one. I actually know people who have actually tried to end their life after being misgendered by a loved one. You have to be it's really something to be really cognizant of for those around you who you care about, what's important to them, because it's very deeply rooted in a lot of oppression, which I think that is just barely coming to the surface now as far as information about what that really means for the LGBTQ plus community, especially for those who are gender nonconforming, non-binary, or trans.
Tell me a little bit about non-binary pronouns and how pronouns work when we're moving outside of the binary.
When it comes to alternative pronouns from the binary, he, him, his, or she, her, hers, they can be very confusing for people in the beginning. That's something that a lot of people say and a lot of people talk about. And I want everyone out there listening to know that's okay. That's okay. There are a couple things to remember there, though. For one, just going back for a quick history, but not spending too much time on it, they, them pronouns are actually very, very, very common. We use them every single day and have always been an okay situation to use for a singular person. However, the word you initially was intended to imply multiple people. So when you say you to someone in front of you, just think language does change. They, them actually is not a change of language. So to kind of move forward from that particular thought, what we do every single day, people who are not familiar with using they, them pronouns, we talk about when we do not have a reference for someone's gender, we use they, them pronouns with ease. It's very comfortable. We don't even think about it. So for example, we'll say, my kid's coach is Coach Williams. And I say, okay, so Coach Williams, the basketball coach, they really run the kids really hard. Well, look what I did there. I said they, because maybe I do, maybe I don't know the gender of Coach Williams. It's very simple. Say, oh, this person called me on the phone, this telemarketer. I didn't know, I couldn't tell by their voice whether they were male or female. And I say, yeah, I just blew them off. No big deal. Didn't even think a second thought.
That's a great example. I like that.
Thank you. So that's something to keep in mind. The main thing to remember when it comes to they, them pronouns is that the people who are using they, them pronouns specifically do not identify as binary male or binary female based on society's definition. So that's really, really key. Based on society's definition, gender roles are not something that we just wake up or that we are born into in a way that we inherently know. We learn them from those people around us. So we see, okay, most of the people who are assigned male at birth look like this, act like this, whatever. Most people who are assigned female at birth, same thing. And we just kind of model ourselves after that. But if you don't identify with either of those things, if you don't see yourself like, well, I really enjoy this aspect of being male, I really enjoy this aspect of being female, I really identify with both things, then you can be very conflicted and not really know how to assimilate. So when it comes to kind of us as a society beginning to realize that non-binary really needs to be included, just like other gender options really need to be included, that's people who are saying, hey, look, I don't have to assimilate and go into this way, assimilate in this way. I don't have to copy everyone around me, because really how I feel is either somewhere in between or maybe neither. So I'm going to use they, them, because there's no reason someone needs to say, based on what they've assumed about me, that I am supposed to behave in this particular way.
But the problem with that is that the they, them part, the only people who are expected to use that are the people who know. So if a cop pulls you over, then I get, they were going 26 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. They wouldn't know to say they or them. That's what I'm pointing out. Isn't that correct?
Well, they should ask.
Huh?
They should ask. If they've had any training, they will ask pronouns.
Really?
Because cops in particular need to be aware of the fact that someone's driver's license may say a different name and gender than the way that that person identifies, even as a binary individual.
Oh, that I understand.
So they should be asking, what are your pronouns, if they're going to use any kind of gendered language. Or really, the best thing to do, don't use gendered language. It sounds complicated. It takes a little practice, maybe a lot of practice for some people, but it is very, very easy once you've practiced enough and get the hang of it. It takes time. It definitely takes time.
It takes so much time that it's a big world out there, and we're not going to educate everybody, and they're not going to pick that up.
That's where I would push back and say, I think that's part of what we're doing, is that this is where society is changing. And so it's easy to say, well, nobody's going to get this, and why bother? But
that's not a great way to look at it, because people can get it.
Okay, that's good.
So here's the thing. When it comes to pronouns, the most important thing to think about is just don't assume someone's gender, period. Don't assume it. So we use assigned sex at birth, assigned gender at birth.
Yep.
Gender, if it is both of those words, actually, both of those acronyms, I guess they're put in acronyms typically, but they are assigned. The key word is assigned. They are not something that a person grows up and says, I fit this way in society. Mm-hmm. Those are things that we say, hey, we're going to assign that to you, and we are going to have you, force you to fit that way into society.
That's
okay,
true.
So keep that in mind first. Second, though, is that if we're talking about people who don't fit into societal binary gender, then they may use they, them pronouns. They may use other pronouns. But if you are not comfortable using those pronouns, here's the easiest possible trick. Don't use any pronouns. So that might be like, what? I have to admit, it can sound really redundant sometimes, but it's really important, because it could mean the difference between someone's life or someone being like, okay, this person's affirming. And it's really simple. So you just say, like, so if I say I'm talking to Joe and I say, oh, Raya's wearing a beautiful sweatshirt today. She just looks gorgeous in that sweatshirt. Okay. Well, I could just say, if I'm not comfortable using she, her pronouns for any reason, then I might say, hey, Joe, Raya looks beautiful in that sweatshirt today. Raya's really rocking it.
Yeah.
Raya's blah, blah, blah. And just completely omit pronouns entirely. That, if there's a lot of people who really don't feel comfortable using they, them pronouns, and that is okay on your journey. That is okay. But you have to be careful not to misgender, not to use the wrong pronouns. So just drop them entirely.
Now, somebody is listening to this podcast right now and is thinking to themselves, and I'm going to try to articulate on behalf of what I know many of my friends have said as we first had this conversation is, okay, I want to be affirming, and I like what you're saying here, but I just have a hard time using a plural pronoun in a singular for a person that I know. It just sounds wrong to me. Yes, I understand that if I don't know somebody's gender, I might just call them because I don't know. Uh-huh. But for somebody that I do know, it just sounds wrong to me. And it brings confusion, and I don't know what to do. And I think that there's multiple people, and I'm not sure who we're talking about, and I just don't know what to do. But I feel like I'm stuck behind, and the world is moving forward without me. And what do I do? How would you respond to that person?
I would say just stop using pronouns. I mean, if it's really that big of a deal for you, so first of all, you have to go back to, what is this other person feeling? can you be empathetic to that other person? Because something that a lot of cisgender people don't think about or don't realize is how much effort and courage and strength and resilience it truly takes to give the world your pronouns when those pronouns cannot be assumed. So if someone says, I use they, them pronouns to you, for one, they're trusting you with the fact that that's important to them and that hopefully you will be respectful of that. But they're also telling you, like, through this shroud of fear, what happens if they don't accept me? What happens if they're trans or homophobic? What happens if they don't use them? How am I going to handle that? If they misgender me, do I correct them? If I do, how do I correct them? Will they think I'm being rude? Will they continue to accept me? There's a ton of things that each person is going through to even share those pronouns in the first place, that it's really not all about you trying to figure out they, them. It's about just trying to live and be respectful of one another. So if you are not comfortable with they, them pronouns, like I said, that's okay. Just don't use pronouns. It's really, really simple. It definitely sounds redundant, but it's okay. That is so, so much better than using the wrong pronoun.
One thing that I have done for myself when I've had a friend that has come out with they, them pronouns, and I now have several friends. I'm sure you do as well. I'm sure you know lots of people in your circle. The more that you are involved in the LGBTQ plus community, you know this just becomes a part of the environment and the community. But if you're just learning this for the very first time, it can be really helpful to just practice.
Yes.
And just say, I'm going to take 5 minutes, and I might say, imagine that I have a friend whose name is Lux. And Lux uses they, them pronouns. Ooh, that's hard. Maybe I knew Lux. Now, I don't know a Lux, so I don't know. But imagine that I knew Lux originally using he pronouns, but now I'm shifting to use they pronouns. Okay, well, I saw Lux at the store, and they said to me, ooh, that felt weird. Okay. And I gave them my number. Okay, I'm getting a little better. And then I said to him, shoot, I got it wrong. Then I said to them, after 5 minutes of practicing, you can be much better.
Yes, that is fantastic, fantastic advice.
I think I'm going to try. I'm going to try on the person that waits at me at the donut shop.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
maybe the barista at Starbucks, or when you're getting your prescription refilled, because most people don't care if you refer to them as they, them, who are not part of the community.
Yeah.
They don't really care. So it's really simple to just try it. Or and if you have anything that might be gendered in your life, just try working on those they, them. And by the way, technically it is they, them, theirs, themselves, but it is okay to say themselves. Use the same pronouns. Use the same sentence structure. You can say are, even though technically it might be an is. That's very uncomfortable. Don't get crazy. Really, truly. They are, that's fine. Technically, yes, that's one person. But if you say they is, that is crazy making. Good Lord. Just say they are. It's fine. No one's going to problem.
My other daughter has a dog. It's their second dog. The first dog was a female. And I'd say, oh, she does this and she does that. And the dog died, and they got another dog. It's a little different color, but it's the same kind of dog.
Okay.
They look very much the same. I still call that dog she.
So that might be a good place to practice,
and then my daughter always corrects me. He. Oh, yeah.
Well, try using they, them pronouns and see what
I'm
happens.
the dog. Yeah.
Yes, seriously.
Well, I'll have to wait until January when we go back to Texas for that one.
And now, Mel, one of the things that I've really, really appreciated about you is that you notice when cisgender people will say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And you and I have had that conversation a few times now. Now, I know with the dog thing, I did that. And I actually had somebody say, see, it's hard to get pronouns right, so you need to cut us some slack. And so for me, that put me obviously in a very difficult situation. Yes. Would you speak to that a little bit?
I would like to.
And could you also talk about, because it's sometimes even hard for me to articulate why that's hard, and I feel like you understand my emotions about that even better than I do.
All right. So All right. So that is a big thing that I talk about a lot, especially when it comes to LGBTQ plus youth or non-binary folk. But it happens with binary trans folks too. You have people who are what I like to say is there are different levels of allies, allyship, allyhood. I don't know what you'd like to call it, but there are different levels. There's a difference between someone who is an ally, who is just like, I support you. You're cool how you are. Good for you. I might make some effort. And then there's a strong ally who, and there's actually three levels, kind of in between too, but I'm not going to dwell on that. But a strong ally is a person who really truly makes the effort, who really does practice in their head, who practices in their car, who really makes the effort to they, them, their, and like construct those sentences. And because it's not just going to come, just knowing and wanting to do it is not going to just happen. You have to practice. It's like learning a foreign language or learning anything new. You have to have repetition and practice. Now, to what you said, you can really, 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 really tell. I can't say really enough when someone is being disingenuous.
Of course.
It's very obvious. Now, a lot of people don't realize that, and they think, oh, I'm an ally. I want to be progressive. I'm going to la, 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 whatever. But really, they come into it, and you say, I use they, them pronouns, and their immediate response is to self-excuse. Say things like, oh, that's going to be really hard. Oh, I'm I used to be an English teacher, so I want to speak English correctly. Or it's going to take me a while. Now, here's the thing, y'all. Here's the thing. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard a trans person misgender another trans person. It happens. Now, the big key to note is how you recover from misgendering someone. What do you do next? And that is the big differentiating point. Do you continue to excuse yourself and say, oh, well, this is really hard. Oh, I'm still, now, if you say I'm still learning, people understand, but every single trans person, every single non-binary person, every single gender non-conforming person, they know it's hard, y'all. They know. That is not a question. It's hard for them too sometimes, okay? You don't have to explain that. What you do need to do is not make a big deal out of it and not expect them to excuse your behavior. But more importantly, take ownership of your mistake. Don't excuse yourself. So this is what you do. I bet you've been waiting for this. This is what you do. You misgender someone. Say, I say Patty, who identifies as female, and I say, hey, Patty has some cool shoes on. His shoes are very blue. I don't know, not a great sentence, but we're going to go with it. And I go, oh, excuse me. Her shoes are very blue. And then I move on. It's really that simple, believe it or not. So then I say, hey, let's see. Hey, Joe. We'll go back to Raya's sweatshirt. I say, hey, Joe. Would you mind, by the way, if I is it all right if I purposefully misgender you? Or
it's actually not. If you would not,
I will not.
Yes, actually, it would. Yeah. So if we could do, but Dad has already given us permission, so if we could go backwards. Thank you, and thank you for asking.
And here I need to take ownership because I should have known better. And but I asked, and I now acknowledge it, and I will not do it again. And that's the biggest, most important thing. I will make that effort never to even ask that because I know.
But I like the sweatshirt anyway.
And I do.
And actually, I'm glad that I have no problem with having you ask or any of that thing. I'm glad that we had this conversation because I want to make sure that everybody understands how deeply this runs for us. That even right now, even for the purpose of just explaining it, that would hurt. I know I can already feel that would hurt.
I can see you tense, and I do apologize for making you feel that way. Yep. So
So I'll be the chump, and I don't mind.
We're going to use Joe. Well, and I want to kind of furthermore too is that it's okay to apologize to a trans person if you've done something wrong. The most important thing is like just right now, I would never ever, and I don't want her to. I would never expect her to. Now, hopefully she'll accept my apology, but I don't want her to say it's okay. I do not want her to use any kind of verbiage that like makes me feel better. And sometimes in society, people feel that way. So it's really important if you accidentally misgender someone not to say, I'm sorry, and pause, because they may feel a societal pull to say, it's okay, or don't worry about it. But it's not okay. You do have to worry about it. And we all make mistakes, and we have to move forward. So if you say, I'm sorry, truly mean it if you're going to say it, and then move on, okay? So we're going to go move on now, and we're going to say, Joe, hey, so... hold on. I'm talking to Raya.
You're talking to me.
Raya, hey. So her shirt's very, very cool. It has a rotary symbol on it. Oh, excuse me. His shirt's very cool. It has a rotary symbol on it. And I like to go with excuse me because then there's not that pause of potential expectation of getting any kind of affirming on my side, because I need to be doing the work. I need to be bettering myself in the way that I interact. So
okay, I think that's good.
Yeah.
That's good for our audience to hear that.
It is. And when you do that, what you're essentially saying is, I don't need you to carry the burden on my behalf. I know when I first transitioned, for the folks that don't understand that, and this is not unique. This is for anything. Anytime you haven't experienced what someone is going through and you don't understand how difficult it is, you have to be educated. That's why we all do this, to be educated, to learn what not to do. But I knew I had a lot of people that would say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying so hard, I'm trying to, and I was really actually surprised myself because I didn't know what I would feel going into this. And I was really shocked that what that felt like to me on my end is, I need you as the trans person to help carry the burden of this.
Right, and that's the problem.
And what I needed is for you to stop asking me to carry the burden, because I'm already carrying a huge burden just with the transition alone. And so when you do, as you said, oh, excuse me, and then just go on, it lets me understand that you're carrying the burden for yourself. And I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, because it's embarrassing. Like, I feel very embarrassed, but I screwed up and it was my fault. And I would never say anything else because I'm going to learn and I'm going to do better and I'm never going to make that mistake again. It's all a learning process.
Well, that really gives us a lot to think about and a lot to practice on. And we want to thank you for that. It was really helpful for you to come in here and do that. And I can see why our audience wanted you back again. There is a lot more yet to talk about, and that's wonderful. In fact,
you, Joe.
Would you be willing to come back again sometime?
I
Maybe before the snow flies?
I would love that, and I will try not to embarrass myself further. But I do have a tendency to embarrass myself all the time, so that happens.
Great. We're looking forward to that.
I think it's great for us all to model that humility and recognize when we've got things like that. And that's why we're so glad you're tuning in, so you can learn, join with us together. We are really excited to have you back next week. And feel free to email us in the meantime, transdescendant@gmail.com. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for having me.